if you're a part of the FNAF theorist community, you've probably seen MatPat's Ultimate Timeline. Or if for some reason you haven't watched it, you've probably at least seen one of the hundreds of reaction videos. Wait, is that head editor Dan? You know a timeline's controversial when your own editor has things to say in response to it. Hi, I'm Hyperenthusiast, and I've been quietly theorizing about Five Nights at Freddy's behind the scenes for some time now, and I have some theories that I'm pretty proud of. So I've decided to go public with them. Now, I'll admit, when I first started delving into the lore of these games, I was just watching game theory and taking everything MatPat said as, well, not fact, because not even he would say that, but as good of a theory as we could get from this convoluted lore of these games. But I no longer think that way. I think Matt does a great job, and I will not accept any hate to him or any other theorists on this channel, and neither will Funtime Foxy. Because props to them for trying to wade through this sea of Fazgoo and make sense of it all. But there's definitely some points that I disagree on. Am I right? Only Scott Cawthon knows, and that means only he knows if I'm wrong too, so why not put my ideas out there? I'm going to start by looking at some of MatPat's more controversial theories in his latest timeline and sharing my opinion on them, just so you can see where I stand on some of this. Then I'll start delving into my own theories in future videos. So, starting with part 1 of the Ultimate Timeline.
It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage.
After this video went up, I saw so many people saying MatPat had clearly lost it because why on earth was he claiming that Fredbear was a real bear in the 1930s? Personally, I thought it was a decent idea, since the Fredbear Singin' Show flyer that we got in Security Breach was so clearly in a different style from all the other posters that we got for Fredbear's Family Diner. But I wanted to do my own research. And while I do agree that there's a very good chance that this was a bear show that predated Fredbear's Family Diner, I disagree on the time. Mostly because 50 cents seems a bit expensive for a small roadside attraction in the 30s. For comparison, Clark's Bear Show opened in 1949 and had the admission price of 25 cents. So I find it hard to believe that Fredbear's Singin' Show was double the price 15 years previously. So what about the 50s? It was a decade where families began to have more free time and disposable income. Cars were becoming more commonplace, causing family road trips to become quite popular. This was before there were large interstates to take people directly to their destination, so roadside attractions flourished. But there's something else that I think is important to consider. The Aftons are British. Why did they come to America? Well, in the late 1940s, a lot of people were immigrating from Europe to the United States because of the fallout from World War II. This led to the Displaced Persons Act of 1948, where Congress authorized admissions to the United States for 200,000 European displaced persons. What's more, I couldn't find much in the way of performing bear shows in the United States outside of circuses. But you know where they were quite popular? In European countries. In fact, they were quite prevalent at carnivals before they were outlawed in Britain in 1911. So, what if it was William's father who saw bears performing at carnivals when he was a kid? And then, in the aftermath of the war, his family is displaced and has to start a new life in America. Maybe he decides to bring some culture to the States in the form of a bear show that isn't illegal over here. And with roadside attractions booming, this is the perfect time to do it. So, he starts Fredbear's Singin' Show and has his son William help out. Maybe helping out in the family business were William's best childhood memories. Maybe it was the only time he and his father got along, since, let's be real, a lot of villain origin stories stem from daddy issues. So, that's what I think, but I would definitely be interested in seeing MatPat's reasoning for placing it in the 30s.
Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters.
Now, I haven't seen as many people talking about this, but I know there are a lot of people out there who disagree that Fredbear started out as solely Williams, and Henry came from competitor Chica's Party World, which then merged to create Freddy's. But honestly, I'm sold on this one. Watch Game Theory's FNAF The Origins of Evil for all the evidence, but it parallels too well with the history of Chuck E. Cheese to not at least be close to the mark. Was this always Scott's intention? Definitely not. But no one can deny that the lore has changed a lot over the years, and I honestly think this is what it's meant to be now. Part 2, The Rise of Afton, was a lot less controversial from everything I've seen. I think the main thing is Crying Child being the first death and Michael being who runs away in Midnight Motorist. I didn't agree with this at first, but I liked how narratively satisfying it was to have Crying Child die first. So I decided to take another look at things. And now, I think I actually agree. Like I said, it's narratively very satisfying to have Crying Child die first, because it gives proper motivation for William.
Was that the bite of 87?
And let's not forget that Scott is first and foremost a storyteller. He wants to tell a satisfying story. He just doesn't want it to be a clear one. Steelwool even said in an interview that it's important to them for a villain to have good motivations. The death of his youngest son, driving him to drink and fester his hatred towards his business partner, is pretty good motivation. Which brings us to Midnight Motorist. If Crying Child is already dead, it had to have been Michael that ran away. Unless Orange Guy isn't William Afton at all, in which case it shows William abducting a kid who had a drunk father and drove a coincidentally purple car. It's possible, but what does it really tell us? Midnight Motorist has to be there to tell us something, right? Like, the fact that drinking contributed to William's origins, and that he was trying to scare his son into line by posting an animatronic outside his window. When that didn't work, William had to get even more creative, and that gives us the setup for FNAF 4. And yes, I do think the footprints were an animatronic that William posted there, and not Fredbear/Crying Child haunting Michael. I have more reasons for this that tie into a theory I'll need to save for another time, but we've never seen an animatronic pay house visits, so it seems a little weird to me. Meanwhile, William posting an animatronic makes sense with where this is all leading. And okay, I guess you could argue that in FNAF 4 we see animatronics pay house visits, but I think it's pretty common consensus that that is William tormenting someone. It's not the same as Fredbear just showing up outside Michael's bedroom. Also, was it a hot take that MatPat said that William opened Circus Baby's Pizza World after his employment at the FNAF 2 location? Because I definitely disagree on that one. At the beginning of Sister Location, we hear William presenting his designs to Fazbear Entertainment's board.
There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
And this, along with Sister Location animatronics' presence in the survival logbook and even the Pizzaplex, implies that William was still associated with Fazbear Entertainment at this time. So Circus Baby's Pizza World, the pizzeria, not the entertainment rental, had to open before William was ostracized from the company in 1985. But I'll get into that more in another video. Speaking of another video, let's move on to part 3, Burn Them All. Here I disagree quite a bit.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense.
No, I'm sorry. Michael specifically said that his father sent him there. He didn't just stumble upon it. Also, this is an operational facility. We see other maintenance workers there.
It sounds like someone else is in the building. Shh.
What happened to it this time? Just seems like these things can't go a day without breaking down.
There's just no way around that Michael came here intentionally at his father's request. I have other theories about the whole timeline of this, but it's way too much to get into here. I do think Michael worked at the FNAF 2 location after it closed, because we hear Phone Guy talking about a summer job, but the paychecks say November. There may be some continuity errors in this franchise, but that seems like too big of an oversight in one game to not be intentional. As for the FNAF 1 location, I don't think it's already closed. It seems pretty clear that FNAF 1 takes place in around 1992, and we know from a scratch fast fact that the pizzeria was open 1988 to 1993. So, unless it was scrapped because it's not true, I think Freddy's just isn't so good on the upkeep. And, we're kind of told that through the last newspaper clipping, right? Now, did Michael burn these places down? I don't think that's possible. I get where Matt's coming from with the burned hallucinations that we see in FNAF 3, but it's that same game that makes it impossible to be true. Phone Dude has been to the old Freddy's locations to collect as much memorabilia as he can. We see it around Fazbear's Frights, and none of it is burned. So no, Michael didn't burn the old pizzerias down. His hallucinations are just being influenced by what he's about to do. Okay, time for the final parts. A family rebuilt. And boy, was this one controversial right from the start.
But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her.
When I first watched this, I was just shaking my head the entire time. Sure, it would be a great narrative, but it was a huge leap. Everyone assumed Mrs. Afton to be dead at this point. And a small part of me was holding out hope that Phone Guy had somehow survived and had gone on to run the company, because I just want him to be important, okay? But then I got to this.
Here, in the Post-it room, the big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side.
My jaw dropped. Because why was Mrs. Afton at the head of the table? That just didn't make sense when, logically, it should be William, right? He was the head of the family. And, yeah, who else would be trying so hard to rebuild the Afton family? Because, yes, I do think Gregory is rebuilt Crying Child, Glamrock Freddy is possessed by Michael, and Vanessa is in some way meant to be Elizabeth. The 3-star ending just really sells me on this. But, speaking of the whole Vanessa-Elizabeth thing, didn't her therapy tapes confirm that Mommy Dearest is no longer with us?
I feel like I know your dad, too. Bill, right? Your dad's name was Bill?
Bill?
I know your mum after she lost the custody case.
As soon as I heard this, I was convinced that this was detailing Elizabeth's past. Her dad is old Billy Afton. But it also didn't make sense to me that Vanessa would be telling this as her story. Unless she was an Elizabeth bot, which I did think for a while, but it just wasn't satisfying. So, what if it's not Elizabeth's past that they're discussing in therapy, but it's just Vanessa's, and the name Bill is just there to throw us off? As far as we know, William never even went by Bill. And this would also mean that Vanessa had a vacancy in the mother department, which I'm sure would be appealing to a mother trying to rebuild her shattered family.
It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself.
I don't see as many people talking about this because everyone was so hung up on Mrs. Afton, but I know there are some mixed feelings about Charlie haunting the Pizzaplex. What do I think? The Nightmarion plushies all around the Pizzaplex are definitely an indication that something is up. And the In Your Dream staff bots echo Nightmarion's jump scare. Yeah, there's definitely something here. But I gotta respond with a hot take of my own. Is Charlie Nightmarion? Charlie is the puppet, and yes, Nightmarion is modeled after the puppets. but it's really a counterpart of Nightmare. And now we're getting dangerously close to my own most controversial theory that I just don't have time to get into right now. No, I don't think Charlie's haunting the Pizzaplex, but I think something is. So I think MatPat is very close on a lot of matters, and he put together a great narrative, but I do disagree on some of the finer points. There's even more points of his that I disagree on that aren't actually controversial, so won't that be a can of worms to get into. I'm very sensitive, please don't hate. I'll be sharing my theories in the coming weeks, and will eventually share my own Ultimate Timeline that will be a culmination of all the theories I'll be posting. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Stay hyper and keep theorizing, friends.